If I just work harder, I'll get rich. You've probably believed that at some point. Maybe you still do. It's everywhere. From childhood stories to corporate slogans, the message is drilled into our heads. Hustle hard, stay late, grind now, shine later. But let me ask you something real. If hard work alone created wealth, wouldn't every nurse, teacher, construction worker, and delivery driver in this country be a millionaire by now? Let's be brutally honest. We've been sold a myth. Not out of malice, but out of programming. Our society glorifies effort while ignoring the mechanics of wealth. We're trained to be efficient employees, not empowered creators. You go to school, learn how to follow instructions, memorize facts, pass tests. Not how to build, scale, or think independently about money. That's the system. It rewards compliance, not creativity. And if you challenge that system, you're called a dreamer, unrealistic, or worse, lazy. It's wild when you think about it. We admire the rich, obsess over their lives, binge documentaries on them, but still think the way to join them is by working 70-hour weeks in a cubicle. You don't get rich by working harder. You get rich by thinking differently. This isn't about being cynical, it's about being awake. The majority of Americans are stuck in a loop. Work, get paid, spend, repeat. All while believing that if they just push harder, someday things will magically change. But the truth? The game is rigged to keep you playing on a field you don't even own. Let me paint a picture. Imagine you're running on a treadmill, and every time you speed up, the machine tilts steeper. That's what chasing wealth with a work harder mindset looks like. You sweat more, but never move forward. Meanwhile, the people at the top, they're not even on the treadmill. They own the gym. That's the difference in mindset. They leverage money. You trade time. They take risks. You seek stability. They multiply. You hustle. And yet, we look in the mirror and blame ourselves. I must not be working hard enough. I guess I'm just bad with money. I need to grind more. No. You need to wake up to the fact that the rules you were given were meant to keep you stuck. You've been taught to survive, not to thrive. To work, not to own. And here's the cruel part. The system doesn't need you to fail. It just needs you to stay busy enough not to question why you're not winning. But today, that changes. Because now you know. Working harder isn't the problem. Believing it's the solution is. Look, let's take a breath for a second. Because if that first part hit you in the chest, good. That means something in you is waking up. But before we move forward, I want to talk to the part of you that still resists. That little voice saying, yeah, but this is how life's always been. It's just the way things are. And you know what? I get it. I really do. Because if you grew up in a house where money was tight, arguments happened every time a bill hit the table, or silence fell when someone mentioned credit cards, then this isn't just about money for you. This is emotional. It's personal. And it runs deep. You didn't just inherit your eye color or your last name. You inherited beliefs, patterns, fears. Maybe you saw your parents working themselves to the bone and still coming up short. So now on some level, you believe that struggle is just part of the deal. That financial anxiety is normal. That dreaming bigger is reckless. You might not even know where these beliefs came from, but they're there. Quietly shaping how you make decisions, how you handle money, how you see yourself. And it's not your fault. No one pulled you aside and said, hey, your beliefs around money aren't actually yours. They're borrowed from people who were just trying to survive. We talk a lot about generational wealth, but no one talks about generational thinking. And that's the real trap. Because what you believe about money will always override what you learn about money. You could memorize every finance book on the planet, but if deep down you think wealth is for them, and not you, you'll find a way to lose it, avoid it, or resent it. That's why so many people who win the lottery go broke. It's not a math problem. It's an identity problem. We don't manage money logically. We manage it emotionally. So if you feel guilt when you have more than others, if you sabotage yourself after making progress, if you feel uncomfortable even talking about money, that's not random. That's programming. And here's the wild part. Most of that programming was written before you were even 10 years old. Think back. What did you hear growing up? Money doesn't grow on trees. We can't afford that. Rich people are selfish. You gotta work twice as hard to get half as far. Those words weren't just background noise. They were seeds. And now, they've grown into internal rules. Invisible scripts that run your financial life. So no, this isn't just about budgeting better or finding a side hustle. This is about healing, unlearning, rebuilding from the inside out. Because until you address the root, you'll keep hacking at branches. You'll chase more income, but feel empty. You'll earn more, but still live in fear. You'll hit goals, but never feel safe. And I need you to know, you're not crazy. You're not broken. You're not behind. You're just carrying beliefs that were never yours to begin with. But now, you get to choose. You can keep playing out someone else's story. Or you can start writing your own. Because once you realize that every belief can be questioned, you unlock a freedom no paycheck can match. Here's the moment everything starts to shift. Not just because you're learning something new, but because you're starting to see differently. And that's where real change begins. See, most people think transformation happens through more information, more books, more podcasts, more hustle. But in reality, it happens the moment your perspective cracks open and you stop believing the old story. Because now you know, it's not just about working harder. It's not just about what your parents taught you, or what your paycheck says about your value. The real game, the one wealthy people have been playing for decades, is about mindset. Identity. It's psychological, not just financial. So here's the big unlock. Money is not emotional. You are. Money doesn't love you or hate you. It's not avoiding you or chasing you. It's neutral. But how you relate to it, that's charged. That's layered. That's loaded with meaning you didn't even know you were carrying. And if deep down you believe things like, I'm bad with money, or I don't deserve to be rich, or having more means someone else has less, guess what? You're not gonna create wealth, even if you say you want it. Because your subconscious is always working to prove you right. So what's the shift? You have to start seeing money for what it really is. A tool. A resource. A mirror. It reflects your beliefs, your habits, and your standards, not your worth as a human being. That separation is powerful. Because once you stop attaching your identity to your bank balance, you're free to actually make smart decisions, not emotional ones. And more importantly, you're free to believe you deserve a different reality. Not because you worked harder than everyone else. Not because you struggled more. But because you finally understood that wealth isn't about what you earn. It's about how you think. Let me put it like this. You don't attract what you want. You attract what you believe you're worthy of. That's why you see people with less education, fewer connections, and no fancy resume building empires, while others with degrees and dedication stay broke. Because one of them believes they belong in the room, and the other's waiting for permission. Stop waiting. You don't need to deserve money like it's some moral reward. You need to claim your right to use it with purpose, with clarity, with power. Because the truth is, wealth just amplifies who you already are. If you're kind, generous, driven, more money gives you the chance to live more of that, not less. This is where it gets practical too. You start asking better questions. Not how can I save $50 this month, but how can I create $5,000 in value? Not how do I survive on this salary, but what system can I build that pays me while I sleep? You stop looking at money as something you chase, and start seeing it as something you magnetize. That shift? It's not just motivational fluff. It's the foundation of financial freedom. Because without it, you'll keep repeating the same patterns, no matter how much you make. But with it, you become dangerous, in the best way. Unshakable, focused, unapologetic. Because you're no longer negotiating with your old story. And for maybe the first time ever, you're not just dreaming about freedom. Picture this. It's a Tuesday night. Sarah's at her kitchen table, laptop open, half-eaten dinner next to a stack of bills. She works full-time, pays her rent on time, doesn't splurge. She's smart, responsible. She even clips digital coupons. And yet, somehow, every month feels like a financial fire drill. Not because she's not making money, but because she's always trying to catch up. Sound familiar? Sarah isn't some outlier. She's the average American, tired, stretched, and confused about why all this doing everything right still doesn't add up to peace of mind. But here's the thing no one ever told her. It's not just about how much money you make. It's about how you think about the money you make. And most people? They were never taught to think about money at all. They were taught to earn it, to spend it, to stress over it, maybe save a little. But that's it. No one taught Sarah how to look at her cash flow like a system. No one showed her that money has patterns, just like people do. And no one ever said, hey, the way you feel about money might be why it's so hard to keep it. See, this is the hidden trap. People don't stay broke because they're lazy or dumb. They stay broke because they're mentally stuck in a loop. And that loop sounds a lot like, I'm not good with money. I don't know where it all goes. I'll figure it out later. That later? It never comes. Because the real block isn't the math, it's the mindset. When you grow up watching your parents live paycheck to paycheck, you absorb it. It becomes your default setting. So even when you start making more, you still operate from that same internal script. Just get by. You don't plan. You react. You don't build. You juggle. And deep down, a part of you still feels like anything more than survival isn't meant for you. That's the cost of never upgrading your financial identity. You keep living in a loop, not because you want to, but because it feels familiar. And humans? We'll choose familiar pain over unfamiliar freedom every time if we don't pause and rewire what we believe is possible. Sarah's problem isn't her job or her bills. It's that no one ever gave her permission to think like a builder instead of a budgeter. The mentally broke mindset is obsessed with cutting. Cutting lattes. Cutting subscriptions. Cutting joy. But the wealthy mindset? It's focused on creating. On scaling. On strategizing. It asks questions like, what asset could I build this year? How can I make money without trading my time? What does financial peace actually look like for me? That kind of thinking, it doesn't just shift your bank balance. It shifts your power. Because once you start asking different questions, you stop accepting average answers. You stop trying to survive. And start learning how to own. And that's the moment life starts responding differently. Because you're no longer waiting for a raise. You're raising your standard. You're no longer hoping for change. You are the change. Sarah doesn't need a second job. She needs a second belief system. And maybe, so do you. You ever notice how the word safe gets thrown around like it's the ultimate goal? Get a safe job. Live in a safe neighborhood. Make safe choices. But let's be real. How many people do you know who followed that script and still ended up stressed, in debt, and quietly disappointed with where they landed? We've been taught that playing it safe is the mature thing to do. The smart thing. The responsible thing. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Playing it safe is often the most dangerous move you can make. Because what nobody tells you is that safety has a cost. A hidden one. And it usually shows up years down the line, as regret. Missed opportunities. That gnawing feeling that you were meant for more, but never took the leap. See, most people don't stay stuck because they don't have dreams. They stay stuck because they've convinced themselves that trying is too risky, that building something of their own is too unstable, that wanting more is greedy or unrealistic. So they settle for predictable paychecks, for 2% raises, for a life that fits inside someone else's blueprint. And the system loves it that way. Because scared people are easy to manage. They won't take big risks. They won't question the rules. They won't break patterns. They'll show up, do the work, and tell themselves they're lucky just to have a job. But let me flip that for you. What if the real risk is staying in that safe job for 30 years and retiring with nothing to show for it but a worn-out body and a barely there 401k? What if the real danger is waking up at 50 realizing you've spent your most energetic years building someone else's dream? Comfort zones are sneaky. They feel like protection, but they're often just padded cages. They keep you warm, but they also keep you small. And no, I'm not saying quit your job tomorrow or throw caution to the wind. I'm saying stop assuming that staying quiet, compliant, and careful is going to lead you to financial freedom. Because for most people, that path leads to quiet desperation. Let's look at this practically. The average American spends 40+ hours a week building someone else's system. Rarely do they stop and ask, what am I building for myself? And when they finally want to shift gears, start a side hustle, invest, learn something new, the fear hits. What if I fail? What if I look stupid? What if it doesn't work? But here's the kicker, what if it does? What if the thing you've been afraid to try is the very thing that changes everything? What if betting on yourself isn't reckless? It's the only move that actually makes sense. Because here's the truth the rich already know, stability doesn't come from a job. It comes from ownership. Ownership of your time, your skill set, your mindset, your money. The ones who build real wealth aren't the ones who follow the safest path. They're the ones who learned how to take smart risks. Calculated risks. They leveraged discomfort instead of running from it. And I get it, this stuff is scary. Breaking away from the norm always is. But staying where you are out of fear? That's not safety. That's stagnation. You can spend the next decade doing what's familiar. Or you can spend the next year doing what's uncomfortable, and never have to settle again. The choice isn't between risky and safe. It's between temporary fear and permanent frustration. So let me ask you something. Is playing it safe still feeling safe? Or is it starting to look like the slowest way to fail? There's a moment, and if you're reading this, maybe you've already felt it, where you realize you're the one. The one in your family who sees money differently. Who asks harder questions? Who isn't satisfied with just enough? And while that might sound empowering on paper, in real life, it's heavy, lonely, even. Because being the first to break a pattern often means breaking away from the people who shaped it. You're not just learning how to manage your money. You're learning how to carry a legacy that never existed before you. And that's no small thing. Let's talk about that pressure. That invisible weight you carry when you start to change the way you think, spend, save, and plan, while everyone around you still operates from survival. You try to talk about investing, and they tell you to be careful. You say no to a shopping spree, and they roll their eyes. You bring up a business idea, and they hit you with, why don't you just be grateful for what you have? But you're not ungrateful. You're just awake. You're not trying to be better than anyone. You're trying to become better for everyone. Because deep down, you know this journey isn't just about you. It's about your kids never having to feel what you felt. It's about your future self being free from the stress that kept your parents up at night. It's about building a new blueprint, one your family never had the chance to follow. And yeah, it's hard. There's no manual for this. No applause. In fact, sometimes there's resistance. The people you love might not support you right away. Not because they don't care, but because your growth threatens their comfort. It shines a light on what they never questioned. That's part of the process. You're not just breaking the cycle of financial struggle. You're breaking emotional and psychological patterns passed down like heirlooms. And every decision you make, to save when you could spend, to invest when you could play it safe, to keep going when you could shrink, is a decision to rewrite history. You might not have grown up with wealth, but you're creating a mindset your children can inherit. One built on ownership, not obligation. On purpose, not panic. On clarity, not chaos. And here's what most people don't realize until they're deep into this path. When you heal your relationship with money, you start healing your relationship with yourself. You stop defining your value by what you can provide or prove. You stop overcompensating for your past by overspending in your present. You stop trying to impress people who never had to carry what you carry. You start choosing peace over performance, vision over validation. And maybe for the first time in your life, you give yourself permission to want more, without guilt. To rest without shame. To grow without apologizing for it. Being the first is never easy. But it's always worth it. Because the moment you decide to become the turning point in your family's story, you become the proof that it's possible. Not just to escape poverty, but to rise with purpose. To build with intention. To leave something behind that says, we didn't just survive, we evolved. And that's generational wealth in its purest form. You ever sit back and wonder what rich really means? Not the Instagram version with rented Lambos and fake flexes, but your version. The kind where you wake up and breathe, not rush. Where you make decisions based on what feels right, not what you can afford. Where your calendar, your energy, and your money are aligned with who you actually are, not who you're pretending to be. Because here's what no one tells you until you burn out chasing someone else's version of success. Real wealth isn't a number. It's a feeling. The truth? Most people don't want to be rich. They want to feel safe, free, at peace. But since nobody ever taught them how to define that for themselves, they chase what's loud and shiny instead. A dollar amount, a zip code, a job title. They check boxes, hit goals, and still feel empty inside. Why? Because if your version of wealth isn't rooted in your values, it'll always feel like a costume, like you're just playing the part. Let me ask you something. If your debt disappeared tomorrow, if your bills were covered for the next 10 years, what would your life actually look like? Would you still be doing what you're doing now? Would you live in the same place? Spend time with the same people? Or would you finally give yourself permission to do what you really want? That answer right there? That's your real definition of wealth. And most people are too busy to even ask the question. We've been conditioned to think wealth is about accumulation. Stack more. Hoard more. Show more. But what if it's really about alignment? About designing a life you don't need a vacation from? About creating margin, not just in your bank account, but in your mind? Some of the wealthiest people emotionally aren't millionaires. They're people who made decisions that bought back their time. Who left jobs that drained them. Who said no to status so they could say yes to sanity. Who learned that sometimes, the richest thing you can own is your own time. And don't get it twisted, this isn't some anti-money rant. Money matters. A lot. It pays for choice, access, peace. But when you realize money is a vehicle, not a destination, everything changes. You stop asking, how much do I need to feel rich? And start asking, how do I build a life that feels rich now, even as I grow? You stop moving the goalpost every time you hit a milestone. You stop tying your self-worth to your net worth. You stop using money to prove something and start using it to build something. That's the pivot. From ego to impact. From pressure to purpose. And it's not something someone else can define for you. It's personal. Sacred, even. Because when you finally stop chasing the idea of being rich, and instead define what wealth looks like for you, you reclaim your power. You stop performing. You start living. You build from intention, not insecurity. So maybe it's not about getting rich at all. Maybe it's about getting clear. Clear on what you value. Clear on what freedom feels like. Clear on what you're no longer willing to trade just to look successful. Because when you get clear, you stop playing by someone else's rules. And that clarity? That's wealth that no one can take from you. Look around, seriously. Take a second and think about your daily inputs. The people you text. The content you scroll through. The conversations you hear in the background. All of it, silently shaping what you believe is normal. What you believe is possible. What you believe you deserve. See, most people don't fail because they lack talent or drive. They fail because they stay in environments that shrink their ambition. It's not obvious at first. It feels casual. Harmless. A friend saying, "Must be nice," when you talk about starting something new. A coworker joking, "We'll never be rich, might as well enjoy being broke." A podcast that spends more time ranting than teaching. It's all background noise, until it becomes the script you live by. We become what we tolerate. And your environment? It's either programming you to expand or convincing you to shrink. This isn't about cutting off everyone who doesn't get it. It's about waking up to the fact that your inputs create your identity. And identity drives behavior. So if you're constantly around people who see money as a struggle, guess what? Even your wins will feel temporary. You'll feel guilt about progress. You'll downplay your goals just to stay relatable. But when you shift your environment, even just slightly, things start to move. You start seeing people talk about investing instead of complaining about bills. You hear conversations about building instead of barely getting by. You realize that wealth isn't just for the lucky, it's for the intentional. And sometimes, that means choosing lonely over loud for a while. Because growth is uncomfortable. Especially when it separates you from the version of you everyone is used to. You might lose some weekend plans. Some group chats. Some comfort. But what you gain? Vision. Energy. Clarity. Direction. It's like walking out of a fog and realizing the whole time you were playing small because your world kept rewarding smallness. You were trying to grow, but everything around you said, "Settle down. Don't make too much noise." And here's the part that hits hard. You don't rise to your goals. You fall to your standards. And your standards are built by what you see, hear, and surround yourself with every single day. So yeah, your environment matters. Not because it controls you, but because it conditions you. And conditioning happens subtly. Repetition. Exposure. Familiarity. Start watching what inspires you instead of what numbs you. Start spending more time with people who make you stretch instead of shrink. Even if it's virtual. Even if it's books, YouTube, podcasts, creators. That counts. Because when you shift your surroundings, you shift your story. And suddenly, things you thought were unrealistic start feeling possible. Even natural. You don't need everyone to understand you. You need you to protect your vision long enough for it to become real. And sometimes, the most powerful move you can make isn't getting more money, it's getting in a different room. Because mindset isn't just what you think. It's what you're constantly exposed to. Change the exposure. Change everything. Let's not sugarcoat it, this is your wake-up call. Not the gentle kind. The kind that shakes you. The kind that makes you stop scrolling, sit up straighter, and ask yourself, what the hell have I been doing with my potential? Because by now, you've heard the truth. This isn't just about budgeting better or working longer hours. This is about ownership of your beliefs, your behavior, your future. No one's coming to rescue you. That sounds harsh, but it's also the most empowering thing you'll ever realize. Because the moment you stop waiting for external permission, a raise, a loan, a partner, a lucky break, and start acting like the CEO of your own life, everything changes. The truth is, most people stay broke not because they lack opportunity, but because they never take control of their internal narrative. They keep outsourcing their power, blaming the job, the system, the timing. But behind every excuse is a mindset screaming, "I'm not enough. This isn't for me." Let me say this as clearly as I can. Being broke is temporary. Staying broke is a mindset. And no, this isn't about pretending everything is fine or faking confidence. It's about confronting the reality that your thoughts shape your results. That your beliefs are either building your future or building your excuses. So ask yourself, are you building a life, or just reacting to one? Are you making moves based on vision, or on fear? Are you repeating the patterns you saw growing up, or rewriting them on your terms? Because the truth is, if you don't consciously rewire your money mindset, the world will do it for you. And the world doesn't care about your dreams. It cares about keeping you comfortable, predictable, compliant. But you're not here for that. You're here because something in you, that deep defiant voice, is saying, there's more. More than bills and survival. More than checking your account before you swipe. More than hoping something changes without you changing first. And now you can't unsee it. You can't unknow the truth that wealth is psychological before it's financial. That the biggest gap between you and the life you want isn't money. It's belief. Identity. Ownership. The good news? That means it's fixable. It's yours to claim. No gatekeeper. No secret code. Just one decision at a time, to show up differently. To think like someone who already belongs in the rooms you've been afraid to walk into. You're not starting from scratch. You're starting from experience. From pain. From resilience. You're starting from the exact place most success stories begin, rock bottom clarity and a refusal to settle. So here's what I want you to do. Don't just feel inspired. Feel responsible. Not guilty. Not overwhelmed. Responsible. Because if something in this hit you, even a little, that means the story you've been telling yourself is ready to change. And if you're still here, reading this, then deep down, you're ready too. So take the next step. Say no to what no longer serves you. Say yes to thinking bigger, showing up bolder, and moving like someone who's already wealthy in mindset. Because that's where it starts. Not in the bank. Not on a spreadsheet. But right here, in your mind. Let's build from there.